Thanks for watching this video from the Bible Fulfilled. My name's Alex Polyak. I am the director of the Bible Fulfilled. And today I'm going to be talking about Jesus' thief coming. Many Christians believe that the second coming will be a total surprise to everybody, including Christians. After all, Jesus said that he would come as a thief. But as I'm going to show, Jesus was not coming as a thief to his followers or to his disciples. He was coming as a thief to his enemies. His followers knew the approximate timing of the second coming. Now let me prove this. Okay, point one. Consider what the Apostle Paul said to the Christians of his day. And by the way, Paul said this in approximately the year AD 50, which was around 20 years before the city of Jerusalem and the temple was destroyed. So here's what Paul said, quote, "But concerning the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in the darkness, so that the day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness." End quote. This is 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 to 4. So as the passage says, Jesus' disciples were, quote, "not in darkness, so that the day," or the second coming is what the day refers to, "should overtake them as a thief." The timing of the second coming would not be a surprise to the disciples in the least. After all, Jesus had specifically told them 20 years earlier, during his earthly ministry, that he would come within a generation. And you can read this in Matthew 16, verse 28, or Matthew 10, verse 23, or Matthew 24, verse 30 to 34, or Matthew 26, verse 64, just to name a few. So while the disciples did not know the exact day and hour of the second coming, they certainly knew it would happen within their generation because Jesus said so over and over and over. In fact, in the Olivet Discourse, Jesus had even told his disciples the specific precursors to watch for, such as false messiahs and wars and rumors of wars and persecution and the abomination of desolation. What else? Oh, tribulation. And you can read this, by the way, in Matthew 24, verses 4 to 28. And then Jesus said, quote, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on clouds of heaven with power and great glory." And this is Matthew 24, verses 29 to 30. And when did Jesus say this would happen? Quote, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." End quote. This is verse 34, still in Matthew 24. So, by the way, a biblical generation equals 40 years. And you can read this in Hebrews 3, verses 8 to 10, or Numbers 14, verses 30 to 34, or Nehemiah 9, verse 21. So the second coming had to happen within 40 years of Jesus given the Olivet Discourse. Okay, so let's go back to Matthew 24, still in Matthew 24. Then in verse 42, Jesus says, quote, "to watch." Now, let me ask you a question. Why would Jesus say to watch if the second coming was supposed to be a surprise, right? That would make no sense. The second coming was obviously not going to be a surprise to Jesus' disciples, although it would be for his enemies, as Paul said in Thessalonians, which I just read. Okay, so as the precursors that Jesus warned about in the Olivet Discourse began happening, one after the other, the apostles knew the second coming was about to happen. That's why James, the apostle James, said in approximately the year AD 62, quote, "The coming of the Lord is at hand. Behold, the judge is standing by the door." This is James 5, verses 8 to 9. This is also why Peter said in approximately the year AD 63, the end of all things is at hand. The time has come for judgment to begin. This is 1 Peter 4, verses 7 and verse 17. And did this event happen? Did Jesus come on clouds of glory? Absolutely. It happened in the year AD 70, exactly when Jesus said it would happen, within a generation. In fact, the notable first century historian Josephus documented this event. He said the city of Jerusalem and the temple were utterly destroyed in the year AD 70. Josephus said 1.1 million Jews were killed, another 97,000 were taken into slavery. Plus, the Old Covenant age, which had been around for 1,500 years, came to a crashing end. After all, without a temple, the Jews cannot adhere to most of the requirements of the Old Covenant. So Jesus came on clouds of glory, just like he had warned. By the way, that's what a cloud coming refers to, a judgment. For more about this topic, by the way, check out my video called What is a Coming of the Lord? I go over this in detail, so I'll put a link to that video in the notes below. Okay, so check that out if you're interested. Okay, point 2. Jesus also talked about his thief coming in the book of Revelation. Keep in mind, he was speaking through an angel here. Remember, he had been crucified 30 years earlier. So in Revelation, he's speaking through an angel, as you can see in chapter 1. Okay, so in Revelation 16, verse 15, Jesus says, quote, "Behold, I am coming as a thief." And what was the reason for this thief coming? Quote, "For they have shed the blood of the saints and the prophets." So Jesus' enemies have shed the blood of the saints and the prophets. That was the reason for the thief coming, to avenge the blood of the saints and the prophets. The Jews, by the way, had a long track record of killing God's prophets. So Jesus was coming as a thief to finally avenge this. And when would this thief coming happen? Jesus tells us a few chapters later. We're still in Revelation, by the way. And it says, quote, "These things must shortly take place. Behold, I am coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of this prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand." This is Revelation 22, verse 6 to 10. So Jesus' thief coming must have happened shortly after Revelation was written, because it was at hand when Revelation was written in approximately the year AD 65. By the way, notice something interesting here. Remember back in the Olivet Discourse, 30 years earlier, Jesus said he was coming within a generation, right? And I said a generation was approximately 40 years. Well, by the time Revelation was written, 35 years later, Jesus was no longer coming within a generation. By this time, by the year AD 65, Jesus was now coming quickly, for the time was at hand. What a difference 30 years makes, or 35 years. And of course, he did exactly that. He came on clouds of judgment, clouds of glory, which equates to judgment, just a few years later in the year AD 70. Jesus had also warned about this judgment in another passage. These statements, by the way, were made back during his earthly ministry in approximately the year AD 30. As I read this statement, notice the reference to the blood of the prophets, just like in Revelation, as I just read. Okay, so here's what Jesus said back during his ministry in the year AD 30. Quote, "Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves." And by the way, he's talking to scribes and Pharisees here. So therefore, you scribes and Pharisees are witnesses against yourselves, that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, who you murdered between the temple and the altar. End quote. This is Matthew 23, verses 31 to 35. So just like in Revelation, Jesus talks about avenging the blood of the saints, or the prophets. And when did Jesus say this would happen? Quote, "Assuredly I say to you, all these things will happen within this generation." Once again, he says this generation. And again, this is verse 36. We're still in Matthew 23. So this timing matches perfectly with Revelation, as I just showed a couple minutes ago. I can go on and on with these kind of timing indicators about the second coming. They're on just about every page of the New Testament, and they all give the exact same timing. So the timing of the second coming was not a surprise to Jesus' disciples. While Jesus was coming as a thief to his enemies, it would not be like that for his disciples. They were fully expecting it, and in fact were warning people about it all through the New Testament. And they even knew to flee Jerusalem before the judgment hit. How did they know this? Because Jesus had said, quote, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. And let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled." This is Luke 21, verse 20 to 22. So the Christians in the first century avoided this horrific judgment by heeding Jesus' warning to flee the city when the Roman armies surrounded the city. By the way, the reason they were able to flee is because, and this is according to Josephus, the first century historian, so he says that the Roman armies temporarily pulled back their troops. They surrounded the city and then temporarily pulled back their troops. Many commentators, by the way, say it was because the Roman Emperor Nero had died and the Romans didn't know what to do. So they temporarily pulled back the troops until they figured out, how they should proceed. It was at this time that the Christians fled the city and thus avoided the bloodshed that followed. Notable Bible commentator Adam Clarke wrote in his commentary on Matthew 24, quote, "It is very remarkable that not a single Christian perished in the destruction of Jerusalem, although there were many there when Cestus Gallus invaded the city. All who believed in Christ left Jerusalem and fled to Pella and other places beyond the river Jordan, and so they all marvelously escaped the general shipwreck of their country. Not one of them perished," end quote. So they fled the city just like Jesus told them to do, and they avoided the bloodshed. The Jews, on the other hand, stayed, right? And they were wiped out as a result by the Romans. As I said earlier, 1.1 million Jews were killed, another 97,000 were taken into slavery. It was a bloodbath. So the second coming was not a surprise to Jesus' disciples, although it was to his enemies. Okay, so that is it for today. For more information about the topics talked about in this video, check out my book, The End is Here, How the New Testament's Prophecies Were Fulfilled. It should be out in a couple weeks. Also, you can go to my website, thebiblefulfilled.com. I have all kinds of free articles and videos on the topics that were discussed in this video. Also, I want to ask you a favor. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It'll make it easier for others to find on Google. And if you want to be notified of new videos, by the way, hit the subscribe button. Okay, so that is it for today. Thanks for watching this video. Have a great day, and I will see you next week.